but it's from the Almighty. When the leaves fall from the tree, every plant that grows on land.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Sister Circle live this Ramadan on CVFM Radio Live. And this is our third week here for Sister Circle. And we are going to be with you from now until 7 o'clock this evening. And joining me as always is Sister Julie. Assalamu alaikum, Julie.
Walaikum assalam. How are you?
I'm good. Alhamdulillah. It's been a lovely week with lovely weather. And feeling fearful in relation to the announcement this evening at 7. So I'm kind of being optimistic that we get some good news, inshallah, at 7 today.
Well, some news anyway. I don't know whether it's I think it's been widely leaked as to what's going to happen, but yeah, it's not going to be much change.
We should be hopeful.
Oh, yeah, okay. The main advice is still going to be stay at home.
I could throw a bit of fire and wood on the fire, if you like, and say, well, you know, this wouldn't happen if women were running the country. But just saying that. But, you know. Anyway, how are you?
Alhamdulillah, I'm all right. I've got, if you're watching, I've got these Bluetooth headphones on, so that should be a little bit better, but I don't know whether it'll last the whole broadcast, because it says it can get kind of like 2 hours of continuous use, so it'll be really pushing it. So we'll see. If it does die, I can just go onto the speakers on my laptop, but hey, we'll see how it goes.
Okay. So we, in our first week of Sister Circle, we discussed health issues in relation to both Islam and the lockdown and Ramadan. So we kind of covered quite a few things in relation to what Islam says about health and what we can do to be healthier amid the current situation. Last week we talked about, as it was your anniversary of taking your shahada, we talked about your story and how you came into Islam, and we read out the stories of a few of the local sisters and how they came into Islam. But here we are in week 3, and we have a completely different angle, because Sister Circle is we've never really followed any rules and regulations. We've always gone with what we thought was the right thing to do at the time. And this week we are talking about modern day lessons, how we can learn in today's world from the stories of Prophet Yusuf. Obviously, all of the prophets have got amazing lessons in them. They've got amazing stories in them. You know, and we're very privileged to have their stories to learn from, both good and bad experiences. And obviously, we have information on some prophets more than what we have on others. For example, there are only 25 of them that are actually named in the Quran itself, but we know that there are many more that are not named. And it's very difficult, I think, to not like them all, because they all have their own place, depending on where you are in your own life and where you are with your own journey into Islam. And the age that you are at as well. You will relate to certain stories at certain stages of your own life. But Prophet Yusuf's story is a really interesting, challenging. You know, we shouldn't look at the story of Prophet Yusuf or any of the prophets as being, well, it's an old story, it mattered then, it's got no relevance to now. You know, because times were different. You know, they didn't have the lifestyle that we have today, which is all valid, you know, theory. However, the lessons from those stories still stand, because when we look at all of the prophets, not just Prophet Yusuf, but when we look at all of the prophets, despite being those that were closest to Allah, that were given and were trusted with the message from Allah, they had some of the most challenging times with society, with family, with
Mm-hmm.
health, with wealth, with different wars and battles. And we ourselves will always experience and taste certain things from between birth and death. We will experience certain things. And even in the Quran, Allah says, you know, I will test you with your children. I will test you with your health. I will test you with your wealth. And we should never think that because we come onto the path of Islam, that means we're going to be, you know, we're going to have an easy ride from there on in, or that Allah's not going to test us. If he brought challenges to the prophets, of course he's going to bring challenges to us as well.
Absolutely.
Prophet
Okay then.
is the focus today.
Prophet Yusuf. Yes. And I thought this is not entirely my own work. I've viciously plagiarized it from other sources, but then that's the thing, isn't it? You take from other people, you take the good stuff that they do, and you then kind of move, you know, sort of you then broadcast it out from yourself as well, because that's the whole point, isn't it? So this story, or this modern lesson from Surah Yusuf is toxic love, and it's not from El Aziz's wife either. It's from an entirely different source, right at the very beginning of the surah, actually. So just a little introduction to the surah first. So Surah Yusuf was given to the Prophet in the year of grief for him, and in that year he'd lost two of his the two people that were most beloved to him, his wife and his Khadija, and his uncle, and also it was when he was in Mecca, and the attacks on Muslims and himself were becoming more intense at that time. So he was in real need of some solace, really, and comfort. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him this surah as a comfort and solace to him. And it's the only surah in the Quran where you have a complete story. In other, we get the complete story of all of the major prophets within the Quran, but we get them in little bits, piecemeal. And this is the
we
sorry.
We talked about that last week.
About how
when you read through the surahs of the Quran, you'll get a little bit of, say, Prophet Ibrahim, but then a couple of more surahs later, you'll get the next part of the story, or even a reminder of the story that's already gone. But with Prophet Yusuf, it does kind of, it flows.
Narrative, isn't it?
It gives you the full insight.
And bear in mind that Yusuf came from an amazing lineage. His great grandfather was Ibrahim, his grandfather was Ishaq, and his father was Yaqub. So an amazing family and family history as well. All of these people who were prophets are the best of people. So if looking at this kind of the surah as a whole, it was it's not only was it a comfort to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it was a kind of a historical gift as well, because it was a story that he would not have known because of it's a story of the Israelites. It's not a story of the Arabs. It's not one that he would have known. But what it does is it puts the story of Musa in context, because if you think about it, Yusuf, without Yusuf going through the experience he went through, being found by the water drawers from the caravan, being sold into slavery into Egypt, interpreting a dream and saving the Egyptian people, and in doing so saving the people from the kind of the areas around, particularly his family who was in Canaan. And they came from, the 12 tribes of Israel, which is the 12 brothers, came from Canaan to settle in Egypt, and then they became a people within Egypt. And then later on, when the Egyptian government hierarchy decided that the Israelites were then a threat to their society, actually enslaved them. So without Yusuf, you couldn't have had the Musa story. So it's that kind of transition. And he wouldn't, the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't have had that background, because it's not a story he would have come across. So it contextualizes a lot of the other things that that have been that came in the Quran before and after.
This is one of the miracles of the Quran, isn't it? That's
absolutely, yes.
How could Prophet Muhammad ﷺ have had the details and the information, not obviously on Prophet Yusuf's story, but on the other information that's in the Quran as well? He couldn't possibly have known it himself as an individual, you know. And even if he had, you know, we know ourselves in modern day about Chinese whispers when we're given a story and we're asked to repeat that story exactly as we've been told it to somebody else, and we ask it to go around even 10 people in the same room.
Oh yeah.
This, and by the time it comes back, it's a completely different message. So, you know, and this obviously is why the Quran is so accurate, because the Quran has never been changed. It wasn't passed from, you know, it's not that kind of, like the Bible has been edited and changed and the Quran hasn't. And that preserves the stories of the prophets, that preserves the stories of Prophet Yusuf as well, and saves it from, you know, anybody's own interpretation or anybody adding and subtracting. And you know, the Prophet ﷺ couldn't possibly have known the inner details that are preserved in the Quran himself.
Yeah.
They could only come from Allah.
Yeah, well, there was a question asked about the same time. I think it was one of the Jews had asked a question of him. Maybe I think it was a question that was actually sent from Medina back to Mecca. So you know, where they were before the Hijrah, questioning about some of these things. So this is again, this was an answer to a question that was asked by some of the Jews, and they were amazed again that he knew the story. So it was. So it's a very personal surah as well, isn't it? There's lots of messages within that surah, and everyone can deeply connect with it. It's a story that kind of resonates with everybody, and there's things in that surah that can move us all to tears. It is an amazing surah. So if you look at the surah at the beginning, the first 3 ayat of the surah have nothing to do with the story. It's kind of an introduction. But it's a very old story as well, because it was, if you look at it, its place in the Bible, in the Old Testament of the Bible, it's actually right at the end of the very first book. So it's right at the end of Genesis, so it must have been Revelation at the time. So it had changed over a period, but again, it's a story that so its part in the Bible was certainly, you know, the Old Testament was Revelation, but then was changed quite significantly.
It even got into a very popular live theatre performance in recent.
Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I remember seeing that. It was, yeah. It is a story that resonates, isn't it?
Complete with song and dance. Complete with song and dance all the way through. It was a musical.
Oh, yes. It was when there was another one out at the time as well, wasn't there? Just a little bit before. It was when it was a thing, wasn't it? Godspell. That was when the story of Jesus, Isa in a musical as well. I wasn't Muslim when I went to see Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, honestly. So yeah. So in the Surah Yusuf, what Allah Subhanahu wa Taala is doing is he's retelling the story, as you said, because the thing with Bible stories within the Bible is there's people who there's always reinterpretations, and there's the translations from the Hebrew into other languages, and then from other language, like into Greek, and then Greek into something, and then Latin, and then Latin into English. So there's lots of steps along the way where things can get changed. But then there's those that have actually changed the story to suit themselves as well. So there's been a lot of retelling and changes within that story. But in the surah,
with Islam, isn't it? That at least when, although we do have English translations of the Quran, or Spanish, French, German, and so on, they are translating from the Arabic text direct to their first language. So it's only going through one translation, as opposed to going, like you said, from Hebrew to this language, to this language, to this language, to this language, and it literally the essence is lost in that translation, in that long translation. At least with the Quran, when the translation is done, it's gone from Arabic to one language. So in England, we will translate it from Arabic into English. In France, they will translate it from Arabic to French. There's a lesser chain involved. So the translation is going to be more accurate with just one chain, as opposed to having a long line.
Then we could always learn Arabic, can't we? Well, it's a challenge, but
to learn Arabic, which we should all try and do, and may Allah make it easy for us, because learning another language, especially Arabic, is very challenging and very difficult, which is why we do try and teach our children as young as possible to do it. But then when you have people like myself and you, who kind of find our way here as adults, when learning a new language is a little bit more difficult, and Arabic is no easy feat either. You don't want to obviously delay reading the Quran until you have learned Arabic with tajweed and with translation, because you could be delaying yourself, a number of years before you're able to read it, which is why we obviously have to rely on the translations and people to explain the translations and the tasfir to go along with it. But alhamdulillah, we have those things, and that makes it easy for us while we are learning the Arabic.
So we've got this story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala retells. He retells it with different emphasis and different highlighting, but it is the same story, but it's the true untouched version this time. And that's the first two ayah of this surah is Allah telling us that we have a clear and clarifying book, and it's not ambiguous. There's very little ambiguity within the Quran. It's very explicit, and the Quran is clear in what it wants from me and you as well. So it's clear, and it's clear about what it wants from us, and the way it wants us to change the way we behave and we think. It clarifies what's right from wrong, what really happened in history, and it also clarifies the purpose of the historical events within history, particularly in Yusuf, the Surah Yusuf. Again, we're looking at, it talks about it being an Arabic recital as well. So right back to the point we've just made about so that we can all understand and think, and it was meant to be a recital. But why, Arabic? It's interesting, isn't it? That there's at the time, or since then, why should the Quran have been revealed in Arabic? Why couldn't it have been a different language? But if you kind of look at what was happening in the Arabic Peninsula at the time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was actually preparing the language for the final revelation, because the Kaaba is actually in a really, really isolated place. I mean, there's the spring, the Zamzam spring around the Kaaba, but around there's not very much in the way of, it's mostly desert, the Arabic Peninsula. There was, if you imagine, there was more than three actually great empires around there. So there was the Roman Empire, there was the Persian Empire, there was Abyssinians, there was all these empires, and none of them were interested in conquering the Arabs because there was nothing there. Oil was yet to be discovered, but as far as they were concerned, there was no point in conquering them, because what would they do? They would just be like, lording it over a load of sand, basically. And so it's a very isolated language, and the Arabs didn't have a lot to look at, really. Stars and sand, really. So their language became full of imagery, a very, very rich language. And Umar himself had said, it said to when he was the Khalifa, he'd said, learn Arabic because it enhances your ability to think. It kind of opens your mind to different possibilities because of the way it links things. It uses the same words for sort of concepts, and it changes the way you think. But if you then learn Arabic as well, it's not only does it change the way you think, but obviously it gives you then access to the Quran and the direct word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you just said. Because if you have in the history of religions and religious scholars, now it doesn't matter whether that's a priest or just I don't know, just any kind of religious scholar other than Islam, they are the custodians of the book, and they give you their interpretation of what that is. I think we discussed this last week a little bit as well, didn't we? Whereas so you either get people, it's almost like controlling the information, and opinion is what the religion needs to be, because they decide what they're going to give the people, or the opposite way on, which is what happened in Protestantism in England, where basically everybody said they were going to interpret it any way they wanted, which is why you end up with loads and loads of different versions of Christianity, because people then, it's like a free-for-all. So it's a bit like anarchy, isn't it? It's like there's no kind of middle ground there. Whereas with the Quran, it's very clear about what it wants you to know. The Arabic is very clear, so there's no room for very much interpretation. And in learning it, then you kind of, you got that direct connection as well. So this is kind of the beginning of Surah Yusuf is kind of telling you about kind of where it's come from, and where the languages come from, and how kind of it alters your ability to think and changes it tells you what it wants. Basically, it tells you what it wants you to do, what it wants you to know. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking direct to everybody, really. But yes, the subject at hand, which is the first lesson within the Quran, which is the lesson of toxic love, because there's unique lessons in Surah Yusuf, but this is one of them. And so this is, I think this is ayah 3 or 4. It says, certainly in Yusuf and his brothers there have been many miraculous signs, that's ayah, and lessons for those who are in need, those who ask questions, or those who are in need. So that's the kind of that word at the end, that it's either people who ask questions or people who are in need. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say we have a lot to learn from Yusuf. He included his brothers. This is where the toxic love comes from, the toxic love of his brothers. And so it's highlighting really that not all the lessons that we need to learn we're not going to learn them all from people we look up to, and role models. Some lessons need to be learned from people who are behaving badly, basically. So there are lessons to be learned from people who fail, as well as the role models. And it's not just for believers either. It didn't say at the end, it said for those who believe. He said for those who ask questions or are in need. And there's those who ask questions are one group of people, but those who are in need are everybody. We need Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to take our next breath, or to allow us to take our next step, or to allow the sun to rise the following day. We are all in need. So it's a lesson for everybody, because we're all constantly in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
When you mentioned the sun, and I was reading in the Quran this morning, I can't remember now which surah I was reading, but it was saying about, if Allah said, I'm going to make the day infinite, how can you bring about the night? And if I make the night infinite, how could you bring about the day? How could you stop the day from being night, or vice versa? What could you do? Or what could your false gods that you attribute to have the same power, what could they do? You know, the idols and the statues that are in other houses of worship outside of the mosques. What could these idols and statues do? Allah said it's permanently going to be daytime. What could any of them or any of us do to make the night come? You know, this is an absolute sign. It's a mercy. It's a blessing, because we need the night time to sleep. If you know, during the day, this is when we wake up, we have energy, we go about our business, we tend to our families, our homes, our work. On the night time, we get into bed, the body recovers, it repairs, it re-energizes, and then we gather it the next day. Imagine if the night didn't come. Imagine if we didn't have that opportunity to rest and recover, and we had to keep going constantly. How would we do it? You know, it's we're so busy in our lives of, you know, our own little bubble of what we see is important, that we sometimes forget that just the fact that the night follows the day and the day follows the night, that the seasons, you know, the sun follows the rain follows the snow follows autumn brings about, you know, winter, spring, everything follows. If it didn't do that, where would we even be? Because the seasons bring the different foods, you know, on our health, on our energy. How we need to eat when the sun is bright is different to how we need to eat when the snow is here. You know, and we have no control over these things. And the other deities and false gods that some of the other religions have absolutely no control over these things at all. This is only something that Allah can do. You know, so what you mentioned there, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's all about this control thing, isn't it? We think we're in control, and then we get something like coronavirus that reminds us that we are definitely not in any control at all. It's all a semblance, isn't it?
It's not just the control, it's that kind of invincible feeling as well. You know, that's not going to happen to me. I'm okay. I'm strong at this, and I'm young, and I'm healthy, and it's not going to happen to me. And then something like a virus, or the seasonal cold, the flu that goes around. Sometimes we have a norovirus, we have a sickness bug, we have foot and mouth, slap cheek, you know, all these things that go, chicken pox, you know, whichever you want to pick. Once that hits you and your body feels that weakness, it's a different story.
Back.
Oh, we lost you for a moment there.
I completely disappeared.
With Prophet Yusuf, and obviously, you know, his family, his brothers, and you called it their toxic love, but we always assume that our enemies are going to be somebody outside the home.
Oh yeah.
You know, and Prophet Yusuf, his story begins where his first enemy, so to speak, is actually within his own household. So we always imagine that the people that are going to go against us will be somebody in the workplace, somebody at school, somebody in the streets, just somebody somewhere. We don't expect our own family to be the ones, but I'm sure that everybody listening can relate to that, because we have all probably experienced it, unfortunately, at some point, where there's been some type of dispute, disagreement, unhappy words between somebody within their own household or within their own family unit. But what we'll do is we'll pause there and we'll hold that thought, and we'll take a break.
We've got a lot to talk about around it anyway.
We'll do a short break there, and we'll come back in just a few moments. So please stay tuned to Sisters Circle live on Ramadan Live, and we'll be back with you in just a few moments after our ad break.
Let's break. Take a break.
हाँ जी, हेलो।
सलाम जनाब, कैसे हो?
जी वालेकुम सलाम। क्या बताऊं, कि ये कोरोना वायरस की वजह से घर से बाहर नहीं निकला और अब खाने पीने का सामान भी खत्म हो गया।
फिर आपने फूड सिटी
Back in 4 minutes after the sponsors break. Sponsors screen comes off.
थे उन्होंने डिलीवरी सर्विस उनके लिए मुहैया की है और बुजुर्गों और मजदूरों के लिए एक खास सर्विस।
Food City, the name to remember for all your ingredients you need this Ramadan and beyond. If you're isolating, elderly or housebound, we'll provide a delivery service right to your door. We specialise in barbecue, party packs and ready-to-cook parmesans. Call us on 01642 90 90 98 for more details or visit our Facebook page at Food City Borough and send us a message. Food City, here for you.
We know how difficult losing a loved one can be. That's why at Rose Memorials we have experienced and friendly staff who can help you make the important decisions when it comes to memorials and tributes. We make quality bespoke headstones with superior craftsmanship at competitive prices. We specialise in serving the needs of the Muslim community, offering Quranic verse and prayer engravings on our headstones. Our showrooms are open 6 days a week with a variety of memorials on show. So visit us at 38 Cumberland Road, Middlesbrough, or at our new branch located at Harrogate Lane, Stockton-on-Tees. You can call us in Middlesbrough on 01642 820 795 or in Stockton on 01642 677 114. Rose Memorials, giving your loved one the memorial they deserve.
हाय, मेरा सारा सोने का जेवर चोरी हो गया।
बाजी, आपने घर पे कैमरे नहीं लगवाए थे?
कैमरे?
जी हाँ, आपकी और आपके सामान की हिफाजत के लिए ये जरूरी है कि आपके घर में जदीद सिक्योरिटी कैमरा और अलार्म सिस्टम लगा हो।
Twin Security Systems is your one-stop for all your security needs. Specialists in alarms, CCTV for home or business, and even vehicle CCTV and tracking systems installed for your peace of mind. All brands supplied and fitted by our team of experts. We also offer PAT testing and all your electrical needs. LED security lighting, installation and maintenance. Twin Security Systems are checked and vetted approved, so you know you're getting a quality workmanship guaranteed. For a no obligation free quotation, telephone us on 01642 687070. That's 687070. Twin Security Systems, keeping you safe.
ज़हनी सुकून के लिए ट्विन सिक्योरिटी से आज ही राब्ता कीजिए।
Have a flat, worn out or bad tyre? Come to M&M Tyres and Auto Care to get you back on the road in no time. We have fast and professional service guaranteed with a huge selection of tyres for you to choose from at great affordable prices. From new to used tyres, we carry great known brands such as Michelin, Continental, Goodyear, Pirelli and much more. We also offer wheel alignment service, brake pad replacement, oil and filter change, exhausts, batteries, alloy wheels and accessories. M&M Tyres and Auto Care located at 177 Stockton Street, Middlesbrough and 112 Norton Road, Stockton-on-Tees. If you can't come to us, then don't worry, we can come to your home or workplace as we offer a mobile tyre fitting service. Just call 01642 224848.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Live from the heart of Middlesbrough, this is CVFM Ramadan Live.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhan.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Sister Circle Live, this Ramadan Live. And we're going to be with you until about 7 o'clock, inshallah. And we're talking about Prophet Yusuf and how we can employ the lessons from his story to today. And just before the break, we were talking about the toxic love between his brothers and himself, and how we all have probably experienced at some point in our lives, issues between the family, and how we expect it to come from the family least.
Yes. Yeah, I think I'm going to kind of discuss it quite a lot of depth, really. And it's not so much the toxic love of the brothers, or the relationship between Yusuf and the brothers. It's more about the brothers' relationship with the father Yaqub. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they said, when they said Yusuf and his brother are definitely dearer to our father than we are to him, or dearer or more lovable to our father than to him. So they're looking at Yusuf, and I mean, with his younger brother, we know he was called Benjamin, but he's not mentioned by name in the Quran, because we're only given information that's useful, and it's not really useful for the story to know his name. But so it's kind of, the brothers are saying, Dad loves those two, Yusuf and Benjamin, and more than he loves us. And you know, what is, this is where they kind of, they don't, do they love their father, or do they want to possess their father? Because it's like, do the brothers want their dad to feel what they want him to feel? Oh, hang on a minute, I've got a mad cat on the sofa. Stop it. Causing damage. So what they're wanting is their father to feel what they think he ought to feel, and you know, it's because, and they want to control him. Basically, it's about control. It's not about loving their father. Just because their dad shows affection to Yusuf, and we've got to remember who their dad is. So Yaqub is cited quite often within the Quran as an amazing example of parenthood and fatherhood. Is a role model for parents in the Quran, and because he was a parent of both amazing children and difficult children. And in fact, the last thing he did on his deathbed was to speak to his children. So he said, what are you going to worship after I'm gone? So right up until his deathbed, he was concerned with all his children, and he wasn't just talking to Yusuf and Benjamin. He was talking to all his children. So within that kind of criticism that the brothers kind of talking amongst themselves about their father, there's no way that Yaqub is an unfair father, and that he doesn't love all his kids the same as all the other children. That is not. We need to get that out of our heads completely. Number one, is a prophet, and he's above all that kind of stuff anyway. But the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about him in the Quran, we know that he would never do such a thing. So it's this is kind of stuff that the brothers are kind of thinking, rather than actually having any evidence of that.
It's that sibling rivalry, though, isn't it, for the attention of,
oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And obviously, you know, if you have one child, such as myself, and I'm an only child, so I would have nobody to compete with growing up for the attention from my family. Obviously, if you have two children competing. But when you have a high volume of children, as Yaqub did, you know, it's although we try and treat our children equally, it is difficult. The more number of children you have, to even just be able to make time for them equally, because they're all going to have different needs. They're all at different ages. You know, and anybody who's a parent to multiple children will have experienced that at some point, where I'm sure one child at least has come home and said, "You don't love me as much as you love," and they name one of their siblings. So it's you know, what he experienced with his children is something that we can all relate to today as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because he didn't have perfect children, did he? He was very, very difficult children, and that's the thing, isn't it? That's what kids often of all ages, as soon as they kind of, I don't know, they seem to get to like 3 and 4 and they start throwing those things at parents. So, you don't love me. And it is really difficult. It's a very difficult thing to hear as a parent, because you do try and be very even-handed, but you can't, just because you love them both the same doesn't mean that you treat them the same. As if you have like 2 kids who, I don't know, like a maths test or something like that, and one does really well and one doesn't do quite so well, you're not going to praise them both, are you? You know, particularly if you'd kind of been on the back of the one that didn't do quite so well and so asked them to study and then they completely ignored it.
Everybody's got their own strengths and weaknesses, and
yeah,
you've got children of different ages as well, so their abilities are going to be very different. Their strengths and weaknesses are going to be very different. Obviously, Prophet Yaqub recognized that within Prophet Yusuf anyway. He recognized that there was different.
Oh yes, yeah.
That set him aside from the brothers. He recognized that, and he tried to warn him about that as well.
He did, because it wasn't as if he wasn't unaware of what the brothers were capable of either. I mean, he was right at the beginning of the surah. He does talk about Yusuf talks about his dream, doesn't he? And the first thing that Yaqub says is, "Don't tell your brothers," because he knows that what that will do to them. So he's not unaware of their failings, as it were. He knows what they're like. And it isn't as if also that he's not concerned about Yusuf and Benjamin to the detriment of the brothers either, because at the beginning of the surah, or when Yusuf goes missing and the brothers tell him that he's been killed by a wolf, he's very concerned about Yusuf. But equally, later on in the story, when they go from when the famine is happening and they go to Egypt, he gives them advice about staying safe and he's concerned for their safety. So although he suspected that the Yusuf going missing wasn't entirely wolfy, he still doesn't stop being concerned about his sons either.
From the start point of the story of Prophet Yusuf to do with that dream, because it's obviously very significant to his story. So the dream that Prophet Yusuf had.
Yeah. Oh right. Okay. The dream. It was a dream that the sun and the moon bowed down to him, and the stars. Yeah, there was 12 stars, wasn't there? And Yaqub, clearly very good at interpreting dreams. You know, we had an inkling as to what that might mean. So yes, he advised his brothers. He advised him not to tell the brothers about it. And it's one of those kind of those things that come full circle, isn't it? That the dream is then right at the end of the story. The dream is fulfilled, and the mother and the father, and the 11 children bowed down to him. Yeah.
Obviously, the brothers wanted to. They devised that plot, didn't they? They discussed between themselves what they could do to remove Prophet Yusuf from their family structure, because they believed that by removing him, that they would gain more of their father's favor, that he would give them more attention. Perhaps they felt they would love him more. They didn't perhaps feel the love was coming equally. And they devised an idea between them to not actually kill him themselves, because they didn't want that kind of that guilt and that burden on their own hands, but they wanted to get rid of him from the family home. So they devised that plot, didn't they, to persuade their father, Prophet Yaqub, to let them take the younger brother, Prophet Yusuf, out into their work with them, which was to organize the sheep. And they devised from that point to throw him into a well, which, isn't something like what we would imagine today, where where we're out in a theme park and we see a well where we're suggested to throw pennies in, type of thing, and we can easily climb over and take our pennies back. We're talking about a deep well that would keep the water cool, and there would be no way of climbing out yourself without some type of aid. And they threw him into that well with the intention of knowing that travelers would come past and would stop to water their animals and themselves, and would find him there and would hopefully take him along. And then they obviously blood-stained his shirt to be able to take back to their father to say, look, we're not lying. He's the stained in blood. We couldn't protect him. We couldn't save him. There was nothing we could do. We're very, very sorry. And the plan of somebody else picking up Prophet Yusuf from the well indeed worked, because a caravan came by. They were on the way to into Egypt to the slave trade, and they found Prophet Yusuf at the bottom, and instantly thought, well, we'll get for him whatever we can in the market, and they took him out and they took him away with them. They obviously had no idea the value of Prophet Yusuf at that point, and even the people who bought Prophet Yusuf from the market had no idea of his value at that point either. And obviously, right back to the beginning, his own brothers didn't understand the value of their own brother at that point, not just to their father, but to them also. And this is very, very important to understand, because when we have our family unit, we don't always appreciate the people within our family unit. And, sometimes it can take a death before we realize. It can take something bad and something catastrophic to happen to somebody or to something to draw that family unit back together. We take it for granted. We can go to the supermarket and be very kind to somebody who's stuck in the shelves, and can you help me find this item? I can't find it. Oh, thank you. I'm so grateful. We can go through the checkout and the person's helping us to load our bags incorrectly because they never load it correctly.
Not to your liking at any rate.
Yeah, we can be polite and smile and say, thank you so much. It's really helpful. And we can be passing somebody on the street that drops something, we can run over and we can be so super kind and super smiley and super helpful. Then we go home and we put this big mean face on and complain about everything, and you're useless at this, you're useless at that, and nobody appreciates me, and or be ungrateful to our parents. If our parents ask us to do something, we go, and the Quran warns us about saying oof to our parents as well. And we can just take for granted that everybody in that family unit has a special place and a special meaning, and contributes to the dynamics of that family. And this is obviously what Prophet Yusuf's brothers did, is they didn't appreciate at that point just how special that younger brother was.
Yeah.
They abused the trust of their father and of their younger brother massively. Massively.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's just they felt like they weren't being appreciated, because they were saying that they were the ones, they were the strong men, they were the strength of the family. It's interesting though, isn't it, how they went from it's kind of again dynamics within a family, isn't it, that they said they felt that they were the strength of the family, but did all 10 of them feel that? There's might have been one or two have felt that way, but they must have discussed it amongst themselves. And it's interesting, isn't it, because if you have a feeling about somebody that they're not appreciating you, or they're they're treating you unfairly, the sensible thing to do would be to talk to the person that you have those feelings about. But Shaitan doesn't tell us to do that, does he? Shaitan tells us to tell other people that might also be feeling a little bit like that. Like, I feel that, Dad isn't appreciating us. And before you know it, all 10 of them are going, yeah, absolutely, yeah, he doesn't appreciate us. So it's that kind of, it's the sensible thing would be to discuss it with the person who you have the feeling about, but Shaitan is the one that pushes us to completely keep the person that you have the problem with out of the loop. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a parent. It could be somebody in the office, or it could be somebody else in the family, or it could be something, like an education thing, someone in a classroom or a teacher or something like that. But it's how these things get really out of hand because we approach things in a very dysfunctional way. And the thing is, had the sons taken the opportunity to talk to their dad, they would have sorted it out, because because the father isn't, the father is the best of people, isn't he? He would have talked to them about it. But once they get to that stage where they're talking amongst themselves, all they can then do is see the good things about themselves, and they ignore all the bad things about themselves. And they start. No, if that we see other people that do it, and sometimes we can do it ourselves. We paint a picture in our mind of that person, not based on reality, but based on your feelings about that person. So it's not about, so Yaqub was the best of people, but still they had that feeling that their father loved Yusuf and Benjamin far more than he loved them. And then you assume that you already know everything about that there is to know about that other person as well. And how does anybody know what goes on in anybody else's heart? It's the only person who knows what goes on in anybody's heart is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're making assumptions about things that you can't possibly make assumptions about, but that's what happens with that kind of process of, rather than airing it with the person that it needs to be aired to, it kind of becomes like a feedback loop, doesn't it? And this Yaqub taught all his sons about their legacy, so they all knew that they were, that Ibrahim was their great grandfather, Ishaq, and then and they knew that they had been, he would have taught them not just about their legacy, but that taught them in the manner of their legacy as well. So they were in the best education, and yet they can still say of their father, our father is clearly lost in misguidance. I mean, how ridiculous is that? How could they even say that about their father? They knew their father's lineage. They've been taught by their father. They know him to be a prophet.
But that's part of Shaitan's tricks as well, because
that's how far
to Allah, the closer we are to the straight path, the more he's going to fight to pull us back. The harder he's going to try the harder he has to try, actually. But the more he's gonna really try and cause it. And that was his agreement with Allah. When Allah cast him out, he said, give me respite until the day of judgment, and I will purposely try and mislead your believers. I will purposely try and cause disunity and discord between them. I will and where would you start if you wanted to weaken a people?
Mm-hmm.
Where would you start? You would start with the family unit,
the relationships. Yeah,
absolutely. Parent and child, elders and youngers. If you want to create division, if you want to tear down a social system, you would start by trying to break up the family unit.
Absolutely, because that's at the base of everything, isn't it? Really, yes, yeah, and that's Shaitan's constant aim, isn't it? To and that's why we get the Muslim community have a lot of this battle with Shaitan more than anybody, isn't it? Really, because they, if you're already on the path of misguidance, Shaitan isn't really going to be that bothered about you. Whereas if you are on the path of guidance, then it's his job to knock us off it. So yes, it's a constant and hard battle, isn't it? But that's how far from the truth your feelings can take you if you don't address them in a healthy way, and if you allow Shaitan to whisper in your ear and persuade you that the right way to do things is to talk about everybody else or talk to everybody else rather than the person who's the problem or that they've got the problem with. And there's the thing is that I suppose addressing things like that, if you have an issue with somebody, not everybody's Yaqub. You can't, if you have an issue and you talk, you feel you should talk to somebody about it, they're not always going to be as receptive as somebody like someone who is the best of people. And it's it can sometimes backfire to a certain extent, and you can get a lot of abuse for it as well. So it isn't an easy path to take either.
It depends a lot on the person, on the day that they've had, the mood that they're in at that moment in time. If they've had a particularly challenging and difficult day, and then you approach them and try and speak with them the second they enter the door, where they haven't had time to, unwind from the day that they have had, bombarding them with that information of what's in your mind might not be too welcomed at that moment in time. So we have to consider picking those moments very carefully as well. Also, even though how we present that information to somebody isn't necessarily going to be how they receive it as well. They may not understand the words that we have chosen.
Everything changes in translation, doesn't it? Out of somebody's mouth into somebody else's ears.
Exactly, and we there are du'as that we can make. I really like the du'a that Prophet Musa made when he said, "Oh Allah, loosen the knot in my tongue so that they may understand." And I love this du'a because we do struggle with words sometimes to express how we really feel or to relay the message that we really want to relay. And we use the word tongue-tied quite a lot, and we just can't get the words out. And remembering the du'as of different prophets, and in this instance, when you need to talk to somebody, perhaps the du'a of Prophet Musa to help, and obviously your own du'a as well, and ask Allah, look, there's this problem, this is how I'm feeling. If it's good for me and it's good for my deen, please make the way clear so that it can be resolved. Obviously, if this person or the situation isn't good for me or good for my deen, then remove that person and that situation from me. And we have to keep the intention. Is our intention to clear the path because we want the relationship with the family to be clean and clear? Or is our intention to somehow, are we sneakily trying to appear to be a well-wisher when actually our intention is a bad one? And we can appear with one face and really hold on to another face, but Allah knows truly what is our intention as well. So all of these things are important when we do feel that there's been a misunderstanding or a misfeeling, whether it's between family or friends, to make the intention to clear the path properly, to make a dua and ask for Allah's help in creating peace. Take on somebody, if it does take a mediator to do that, then do that. But make sure that the mediator is somebody who is neutral and somebody who actually wants to reconcile you both and not by taking a side and end up just arguing along with you and whoever the issue is with. And then obviously look to stories like from the Prophet stories for guidance, how they did it. You know, what were their du'as, what were their answers, how patient were they, and not look for your advice on movies, soap operas, films. Just because in I don't know, Coronation Street, somebody on this side of the street had an argument with somebody on that side of the street. Don't look for how they argued or how they resolved it as your answer, because it's drama, it's TV, it's not real.
Not real, yeah.
And, it's just look, inside, be the humble one, and keep your intention clean. That is really, really important, the intention behind what you're doing. Obviously, the intention behind what Prophet Yusuf's brothers were doing was not good. Their intention was not good. Their intention was to rid their family unit of their brother, despite knowing wholeheartedly how much it was going to hurt their father. And obviously their mother as well. But the focus in the Quran is on the reaction of Prophet Yaqub. They did it anyway. They did it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's like we're looking at we're talking about situations where, as you're saying, sort of reconciliation. But if you have somebody who when you don't get a supportive and loving response from, that also is covered in the Quran, not in the Yusuf story, but that's the relationship that Musa and Pharaoh had. Because Pharaoh brought Musa up as a son, and yet when Musa comes back into his life, he is the opposite of a supportive and loving person towards Musa. So it's those kind of relationships are covered as well in the Quran, not in the Yusuf story, but all these kinds of relationships are covered, and we see archetypes, don't we, within the Quran? That we see these kind of relationships repeated over and over again, right up until it isn't like the Quran is an ancient book with ancient wisdoms that aren't applicable in modern day life, because the people behave exactly the same as they did in the Quran, and these people, the responses are always the same. So we've got our examples there to go from.
I think with the prophets, we know that initially the messages that the prophets brought, the messages were rejected by a vast majority of people. And with some of the prophets, they were also rejected by their own family. We know that the Prophet Ibrahim's father, he didn't accept he didn't accept God to be anything except the idols that he himself carved. And with obviously with Prophet Yusuf, initially in the beginning of the story, he was rejected by his own brothers. Obviously he wasn't a prophet at this point, but like as you mentioned earlier, the lineage was there within their family, and their own father was a prophet as well. But obviously we know that the caravan passed the well, took Prophet Yusuf from it, took him to the market, and he was sold. And sometimes I think with the story of Prophet Yusuf when he was in the well is similar to the story of Prophet Jonah when he was in the belly of the whale. It's that utter, I am as low as I can get. I am in an environment as dark as it can get. How am I going to get out of here? And that is, again, I'm sure everybody can relate to an incident at some point where they have found themselves in such a deep, dark hole, they can't see a way out. They just whether it's mental health, whether they've lost a job, whether they've lost their home, whether they've lost family, whether they haven't got the grades they need at school, whether they didn't get the interview, whether they haven't got money for paying for bills, whatever it is, everybody at some point has experienced that despair of, I just cannot see a way out of where I am. And that is when faith plays the most major role.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't got faith and you feel like
what have you got? Yeah.
What do you have left? If you have your faith, you still have so much. In essence, you still have everything, because at that point anything is possible. But if you don't have it, and you feel like you're in the bottom of that well, or you feel like you're in the belly of the whale, what can you do at that point? What can you do? Because at the end of the day, you know, if we cannot physically climb out of that well, if we cannot physically save ourselves from that well, who can?
Yeah.
And
that's right.
That was the faith that Prophet Yusuf had. That was the faith that Prophet Jonah had. And that's the faith we need to have too.
Yes. It's the dua that Jonah made in the belly of the whale, when it's like you can't see your way out of that, can you? And yet he had faith enough to make the dua, and then for the angels to take that dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and for him to be saved. And again, you know, as Yusuf was, you know, a muddy boy at the bottom of a well, and he became, you know, the sort of second in command, I suppose, wasn't he, of Egypt, and saved his family. And then that the story of the Israelites started from, you know, the story of the Israelites in Egypt started. It's just you couldn't see how that would happen. And it's like every, as you say, every member of the family has like the brothers couldn't see his potential, but it was there, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what anyone is capable of, and what their future is going to be.
Can you imagine though, as a young boy, part of a big family unit? So you have your parents, you have your siblings, and then the siblings that you trust wholeheartedly throw you into this well. You have no idea how you're going to get out, and the thought process of, why am I here? What did they just do to me? Why have they done that?
Shock,
What's going on? Have they just walked away? Have they just gone home and left me here? What are my parents going to do? And then obviously the caravan passes and removes him from the well and puts him, you know, within their other captives as well, who they intend to sell. And you know that you're on this caravan taking you in the other direction to home. And again, the thought process of a young boy thinking, I need to get home. I need to see my family. I need to see my parents. I'm going in the opposite direction. I can see what's happening around me. The worry, the fear, the unknown of what lies ahead. Still, while questioning, what on earth did my brothers just do to me? My flesh and blood just did to me. Then to be stood up in the marketplace and have people bidding to, you know, how much they're prepared to pay, to then have another stranger, right, I'm going to take you home. Can you imagine what, you know, I mean, obviously we know that Prophet Yusuf is a prophet, but he didn't receive prophethood until he was around the age of 40. But obviously, you know, Allah instilled particular qualities with him. But we still have to remember that you have a young boy experiencing something he never anticipated to experience.
Yeah.
And the thought, the fear, the worry, the or whatever it was that he was feeling,
Mhm.
you know, it's really hard to understand, really.
Yeah,
Even
you can imagine that amount of fear, can't you?
if that happened to me as an adult,
Yeah,
let alone a younger child,
yeah,
you just can't imagine what would the worries and the thoughts that would be going through their head. Planning to run away, planning to escape, who knows? But that's, you know, obviously Allah give him strength. Allah strengthened his character, his heart, his faith through these trials, through these challenges, through these tests. And alhamdulillah, you know, when he did eventually see his brothers again, he didn't, he was in a position to demonstrate his anger, and he didn't. He demonstrated his forgiveness.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And that's again that's the prophetic legacy, isn't it? That he was behaved the best way possible. But I think had his brothers realised who he was to begin with, they'd have been a bit shaking in their shoes somewhat, wouldn't they? After what they'd done to him. But yeah, he was. I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's showing that how that kind of crazy can happen in families is again because it's very you know, you can imagine this kind of crazy happening in a work environment or an educational environment, but for the brothers to be thinking that, you know, their father's confused, that they're the strength of the family, and that Yusuf is the real problem, and they're going as far as to say, well, we could kill him or abandon him, and that's, you know, brothers talking about another brother. That's the worst kind of crazy, isn't it? That this can go on in like a family unit, even in the best of families. And obviously, the Yaqub's family, there's no better family than them, and that's obviously because they were. Bear in mind also that they were Muslims. They weren't, you know, they were raised as Muslims. So this was happening in a Muslim family, not in a family that's, you know, it was had no belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it was that you know, that even in the best of families, the best of Muslim families, these kind of feelings can happen. I think the lesson in there is that parents can do everything they can, or people in a relationship can do everything they can. But when someone has an emotional disorder within that relationship, and they won't address it, then you can't help them. There was and all you can do in that situation is have sabr, and
which Prophet Yusuf did. He had
absolutely,
well, both Yaqub and Prophet Yusuf both demonstrated huge amount of
beautiful patience, isn't it? That's where that phrase comes from, isn't it? The patience of Yaqub in relation to the situation he was in. Yeah, and it's just again just going back to the brothers' attitude to Yaqub as well. That he said that they say about Yusuf, throw him somewhere far away, and your father's face will only turn towards you. As you say, they expected that their father's got so much love and is confused, and he keeps giving it to Yusuf and his brother. But once Yusuf and his brother are out of the way, all that love will come back to them. And they think so. They're thinking that their actions can control how somebody else feels, how somebody else's emotions work. So they're wanting him to feel the way they want him to feel. So that's not love. That's control, and that's the toxic love in that relationship. That they don't love their father as they should. They just want to control their father, and it's that lesson really that's kind of central to that little bit of the story, that And it's something that you see, you know, it isn't as if it happened in the time of Yusuf and it hasn't happened again. It happens all the time, you know, that people want to control how somebody else feels and expecting that they can do that by you know, how you can control somebody's emotions by your own actions. It's more about their validation, really, the validation of them and their feelings than their love for their father. And they didn't. And again, you see, when later on in the story, when Yaqub went blind from grief, they were shouting at him. So you know, there was very little care in their attitude to him, really. They were still yelling at him. So it was, you know, the relationship with their father was completely dysfunctional, really. I think that's the toxicity in there. So it's not love. It was kind of some kind of possessive, toxic.
Yeah, they thought by removing Prophet Yusuf from their unit that would just make everything perfect, and you know, he wouldn't be missed, and they would just receive everything that they wanted to receive. What they obviously hadn't counted on was the mourning process that Prophet Yaqub would go through, and his attention would still be on making his du'as to Allah for how he was feeling. He kept that hope. He kept that hope there that he would see Prophet Yusuf again, that he would see his son. He kept that trust that
he never lost hope, did he?
Allah would, you know, Allah's will was the best will, and his sons were planning, but Allah was planning, and Allah is the best planners. And you know, he cried so much that he turned his eyes white into blindness. You know, and lots of parents will know that as much joy and happiness that the children can bring to them, they can also bring sadness. They can also bring tests and trials and difficult times that do make them cry, make them, you know, the heart ache and the mind heavy. But we shouldn't expect these things not to happen, because they happened to the best of people, which was the prophets. So we are not going to be exempt from it. If Prophet Yaqub cried to the point, if his grief was to the point where he turned himself blind, and Allah mentioned in the Quran that he will test us with our children, you know, we have to remember that we are not going to be exempt from these feelings, from these challenges, from the difficulties, whether it's between the children or between us and the children. What we have to do is remind ourselves, and it's difficult, it's really, really difficult, but we have to remind ourselves of how the prophets, those that we have the stories of, how they dealt with these difficulties. And as we said, it wasn't just the patience, but the most beautiful patience. And years passed when Prophet Yusuf was thrown down that well. He was, you know, he was a young boy. When he was reunited with his family, he was a grown adult over the age of 40. A long time had passed. You know, we're not talking a few days or a few weeks, and we hear many times on the news, it's really sad that children have gone missing, and you know, parents are distraught at where their children are and if they will see them alive again. You know, sometimes the children are reunited, sometimes they're not, but generally a few days, a few weeks passed. But in the situation of Prophet Yusuf, years passed.
Yeah, literally years. Yes.
Years. And
Yeah.
Prophet Yaqub still remained patient, and he still just had that trust in Allah that, you know, what Allah was written was going to come to pass, and that uttermost faith and strength is unbelievable.
Yeah, he had. I mean, he had sabr, but the thing is that he complained also. He complained to his. He didn't. He complained of his despair to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he literally cried himself into blindness. So it isn't as if that, if somebody has a tragedy, if somebody's really, really upset about something, often it's crying isn't not having sabr. I think they are two different things. You can be very upset about a situation and it will make you cry, but it doesn't mean you're not accepting the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's just that, we're human and we become extremely upset about certain things, and crying doesn't mean that it's a lack of acceptance. And sometimes those two get a little bit confused, I think. That, if you...
Sorry.
Go on.
No, another thing that gets confused, and we see this a lot in a culture as opposed to a religion. But what we see a lot is grown men shouldn't cry.
Yes.
I've both, children, young boys, and then they kind of go through, into adolescence, and they're taught from a very young age, boys don't cry, girls cry, boys don't cry, open up, why don't show your emotions, don't show that you have feelings, men don't have emotions, feelings, and definitely don't show it through tears. Yet the prophets cried.
Yes.
And not just Prophet Yaqub, but Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he cried. Other prophets cried as well. So we have to remember, and they didn't cry because they were weak. They cried because out of love. They cried because they felt the worry of the ummah. They had a connection more than we can ever begin to experience. I still cried. So we shouldn't be teaching our children or our young boys or our husbands, our fathers, that crying is wrong, because it isn't.
No.
The sign of a living heart is emotion, and we shouldn't turn it to stone, because if our heart is turned to stone, then what? So
yeah, it's like sticking a stopper in a bottle, isn't it? It's not very healthy. It becomes much that's an unhealthy response, I think, to a situation that needs an emotional outlet, because it comes out. If it's not allowed to come out naturally, then it doesn't go away. It manifests itself later on in other ways, and not always the healthiest of ways either. So it's difficult though sometimes, isn't it?
But if you look at what happened, obviously, when Prophet Yusuf was sold and he was bought, and one of the things that Prophet Yusuf was known for was his beauty.
Yes.
Allah, didn't just beautify his character, but he beautified his appearance as well. And he is known to be, out of the prophets, one of the most beautiful. Different prophets are known for different things. Prophet Musa, for example, was very, very strong. He had a lot of physical strength, and Prophet Yusuf was known for his beauty, so much so that the lady of the household in which he lived, tried to seduce him.
Yes.
And she failed to seduce him because he feared Allah, and he knew that it was wrong. The two of them got married. She was the wife of his master. He was aware of what may happen to him as a punishment of the master if he was to get into that type of illicit relationship. But later in the story, his master's wife invited other women together because they were teasing her teasing her, saying, you know, this woman, this friend of ours, tried to seduce her slave. She's, you know,
what's wrong with the woman?
You know, she's a woman of wealth. She's a woman of status, and she tried to seduce, of all people, as her slave. And they taunted her for it. So she invited them all for food, and she gave each of them a knife. And then she called Prophet Yusuf in. And what did they do? As they saw Prophet Yusuf, they were so mesmerized by the beauty that she tried to tell them that she could see in him, that they cut their fingers with a knife, because they weren't focusing on the food in their hand. They were, you know, mesmerized by Prophet Yusuf's beauty, you know, and his beauty was a test for him also. He could have, you know, been swayed by Shaitan to begin a relationship with his master's wife, but he didn't. He feared Allah. And at the point where all the women who were eating, you know, he could have took a pick there as well. And he didn't. He was humble, and he was modest, and you know, he had no interest in these things. His interest was to please Allah, and to not do anything that he knew would displease Allah, such as entering, you know, into relationships with these women. So, you know, he was so beautiful that a married woman wanted to seduce him, and other women from the area cut their own hands accidentally just by looking at him. Yet in today's society, rather than kind of hiding away from, you know, that beauty aspect, we are flaunting it even more. We are flaunting it even more through social media. Instagram is terrible for it, because Instagram is just about, you know, putting on all these filters.
It's the shot, isn't it? It's the,
and you're not even showing a photograph of your best self. You're showing a photograph that isn't even yourself. It's typically enhanced X amount of times, and the industries around at the moment for, you know, and cosmetic enhancement to wigs, the hair extensions, to Botox, fillers, creating the shape of your jaw, adding plumpness to the cheeks to define the cheek. What are we doing? You know, what are we doing? Is it so important to be beautiful on the outside? Because you're going to age, and your looks are going to disappear, and it doesn't matter how much you inject into your face. It doesn't matter how much you attach horse hair to your hair. It doesn't matter what color you try and tattoo your lips. Gravity is going to come. Old age is going to come, and you can only try and deceive it for a short time before it's ultimately going to catch up with you. And, you know, the dua for when you look into the mirror, you know, oh Allah, you have beautified my body, so please beautify my manners too. You know, and we forget that really what will last longer than our physical beauty is our inner beauty. You know, our manners will always speak louder. Nobody, you know, people remember how you made them feel.
Yes.
More than anything else. And whilst I'm sure everybody would really like to change something about themselves, in that sense of, I wish my hair was like this, I wish my skin was like this, I wish I was taller, shorter, you know, stronger, faster, whatever it is. But then we have prophets like Prophet Yusuf, who was gifted and blessed with such beauty, yet he was so humble. And, you know, I'm sure if he was alive in today's time, he certainly wouldn't be on Instagram, you know, sharing his pictures. He would be the opposite. And
absolutely.
we have to take examples from that
Yeah.
we have to spend the money on beautifying the mind and the heart in our actions, and not on this exterior that as we age is going to be lost anyway.
Deteriorate anyway, yeah.
It's going to be lost. And even with the injections, even with the enhancements and stuff like that, it is still going to, you are not going to get to 80 and still be able to look 20.
Nope.
With any amount of help. But you know as well, the other thing is that, you know, on the day of judgment, when we are questioned about what we did, and we are questioned about our wealth and how we spent it, how do we justify that we had wealth and we spent it on our face? That we spent it on trying to stay youthful when Allah has promised us that we can't. When Allah promised us death.
The only place we'll be youthful is if we attain Jannah.
Exactly, and that won't be through enhancements either.
No.
That will be through blessings. But why are we trying to achieve something that isn't there? You know, and on Judgment Day, it's not going to be a case of, well, you're so beautiful, you can definitely come into Jannah, or you're not very beautiful, I'm sorry, there's no space for you. It doesn't work like that. It works on our deeds. There's no mention in the Quran anywhere we will be accepted into Jannah based on our looks or our appearance or how well we look for our age, or how hard we strived to look younger. You know, we are told only you will be accepted on your prayers, you will be accepted on your good deeds, on your character, your honesty, your charity, how you treated your parents, how you treated the stranger, how you treated your children, all of these things. There's no mention on appearance, other than dressing modestly. That's the only time it's mentioned, and even then we are told, you know, not to dress in a way that draws attention to ourselves. And obviously Prophet Yusuf, you know, he was gifted with that beauty, but he was humble.
Didn't use that beauty as something to
everybody can just marry me and that's completely fine because I'm so beautiful and I'm so handsome and I'll just take all of these women as wives and that's okay. He didn't. He was humble, and he said, you know, Allah, you know, give me protection from these women. Put me in jail. He actually asked actually asked to be placed in jail away from the women, away from the unwanted attention, away from them being able to look at him. He asked Allah, put me in jail and save me from these women. Yet in today's society, we're the opposite. We're putting ourselves out there more. Because we want that attention, and we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be doing that.
I think we need to take a break.
Do we need to take a break? Okay.
We've been hinted at.
Okay, let's take a break and allow our sponsors to have a few words, and we will be back. So please stay tuned to Sister Circle. We'll be back with you in just a few moments.
नमकीन बिस्किट्स और सेवरी स्नैक्स, बर्थडे और सेलिब्रेशन केक्स भी नान के साथ ऑर्डर पर तैयार किए जाते हैं। रमजान में अफ्तार टेक अवे मील डील सिर्फ 10 पाउंड से। स्टार्टर्स में खजूर, समोसे, पकोड़े और मेन कोर्स में चिकन या मीट कढ़ाई, 2 रोटी या 2 नान या फिर चावल के साथ। मरहबा स्वीट्स एंड बेकर्स, 291 लिंथोप रोड, मिर्जापुरा, 01642 507 412। मरहबा स्वीट्स एंड बेकर्स।
मोमिनो माह रमज़ान मुबारक हो सबको, मोमिनो
मुबारक हो हर किसी को रमजान की मुबारक हो। जुल्फकार अली भुट्टो और कश्मीर फूड स्टोर की तरफ से सब ठीसा कम्युनिटी और रेडियो रमजान के सुनने वालों को रमजान बहुत बहुत मुबारक हो।
Kashmir Food Store.
आइए अपने रमजान को खुशगवार बनाइए कश्मीर फूड स्टोर के साथ। यहाँ आपको न सिर्फ ताज़ा गोश्त, सब्जी, फल और मसाला जात बल्कि घरेलू इस्तेमाल की अशिया जैसे बर्तन भी मुनासिब कीमत पर दस्तयाब है। आज ही आए कश्मीर फूड स्टोर, 115 to 123 Abingdon Road, Middlesbrough. Telephone number 01642 242426.
Mayflowers, flowers for all occasions. Wishing a Ramadan Mubarak to all our customers. Why not put a smile on your loved one's face this Ramadan with the gift of colourful and beautifully fragrant flowers expertly arranged by our professionals. Flowers suitable for all occasions, birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, funerals and more. Visit our Facebook page Mayflowers Middlesbrough now to see our wonderful floral arrangements. Call now on 01642 805 080. Delivery service available. Mayflowers, flowers for all occasions.
इस माह रमजान आप जरूरतमंद अफराद की जिंदगी बदल सकते हैं। SKT वेलफेयर को अतिया की गई आपकी ज़कात नादार अफराद को गुर्बत से आजादी दे सकती है। यतीम बच्चे स्कूल जा सकते हैं, उनको पीने का साफ पानी मुहैया किया जा सकता है, उनको वाफिर मिकदार में ग़िज़ा मिल सकती है। इस आलमी वबा के दौरान मुस्तहिकीन को बुनियादी ज़रूरियात जिंदगी की ज्यादा जरूरत है। हमारी ज़कात पॉलिसी के तहत आपकी अतिया की गई रकम की पाई मुस्तहिक अफराद तक पहुंचाई जाए। राबिते के लिए 0300 3020 786।
मम्मी भूख लगी, मम्मी खाना दो।
बेटा मम्मी आपको आज खाना नहीं देगी क्योंकि आज हम खाएंगे हमजा's रमजान platter.
Ramzan special platter serves 5 people, 10 chicken drumsticks, 10 shish kebabs, 10 pieces of fish pakoras, Russian salad box, mint sauce, chutney, dessert, shahi halwa, all for only $19.99. Hamza's, the name to remember. 109 Waterloo Road, Middlesbrough. Call 01642 244 255 to order your Ramzan platters now.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
You're listening to CVFM Ramadan Live.
Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Subhanallah walhamdulillah wa la ilaha illallah. Every time when I'm awake, all things that I see, I know it's hard to believe, but it's from the Almighty. When the leaves fall from the tree.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Sister Circle on Ramadan Live, and we are with you just a little bit longer until 7 o'clock. And that will be the end of our show for this week. And we will be back, inshallah, with you next week. And I'm quite excited to see what the government announcement is at 7 o'clock. I know you don't share my hopes, Julie. I'm not massively expecting too much, but I just think whatever we get, inshallah, is a step forward, and let's just get moving. And anyway,
it's the disease isn't going away though, is it? It's still here. It's just it's all it was the lockdown was really about saving the NHS rather than stopping us all getting the disease. They still expect a lot of us to get it.
That's the thing, even if the lockdown is lifted, whether it's slightly or completely, it doesn't mean that it's suddenly safe. It doesn't mean that
not at all.
Gone. It just means that we're in a better situation to deal with it. It means that people will contract it. Less people at one time will come down with it, so that obviously anybody who ends up needing care, there should be space for them. But what kind of comes to my attention with this, and what I don't understand really, is why has it taken a global pandemic for people to realize that they should be washing their hands as often as they are. They should be, washing their clothes more often or taking a shower more often. It's suddenly we're sharing advice on washing hands, but people not washing their hands before. I've always been quite aware when I've gone into the supermarkets that I'm touching trolleys, handles, that I've seen people with cords walking around and kind of doing this in place. I've always been aware of this type of thing. And, I'm not one for walking around the supermarket and eating something at the same time, knowing that my hands are touching the same handle that I don't know how many people have touched without it being cleaned, and then touching food that's going to go into my mouth. So I've always been quite conscious of that kind of hygiene level. I would never go and visit somebody knowing that I have something contagious. I would never go and sit in somebody else's home knowing that there's a very good chance of me passing it on to them. Why do we need a global pandemic to think like this when we should be thinking like this anyway? And what I've noticed is obviously at this time of global kind of heightened information, that people are saying things like, well, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that we should visit the sick. Yes, we should visit the sick, but not somebody who's contagious. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, don't put a sick camel in with a healthy herd, because you will lose your entire herd. You should keep the sick camel away from the healthy herd. You don't want to infect the whole herd, and then you're going to lose your milk, you're going to lose your transport, you're going to lose your meat, like this. But yes, we should visit the sick. But if somebody is contagious, no, we shouldn't, because we can't visit somebody who is contagious and say, oh, inshallah, I'll be fine, when Allah's told you to stay away. So we have to think about these things, and not kind of think that we are invincible, and we have to consider the bigger story, the bigger picture. We can't just think about just I'm young and healthy and fit, it's not going to affect me, but I might carry it to somebody who could be affected. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of talk at the moment. Some people, we have the conspiracy theories on one side, we have the NHS announcements on the other, we have the government announcements on the other, and ultimately we don't know which is 100% truth. We don't, because we are not involved in that inner circle enough to completely be able to say 100% it is definitely this or that. All we can do at the moment is have an open mind and say, right, let's learn from this, and not just learn about how to wash our hands now, but when we go into October time and we hit seasonal flu, and we hit the time of year when the norovirus, that horrible sickness book, becomes rampant. Think back to now. Going back to the extra precautions we are paying now. For example, don't go and visit your elderly relatives. If your child has a norovirus, don't take them with you to visit your elderly parents. Do wash your hands when you come in from the supermarket. You know, we should have been doing this anyway, especially at certain times of the year when we know that bugs and viruses and, you know, these contagious illnesses are rampant. We should have been doing it anyway. Totally digressed from Prophet Yusuf.
Yeah, well, it's a thing, isn't it? We're just relying on our immune systems a little too much. Well, we've covered most of Prophet Yusuf anyway. So just anyway, the story kind of comes full circle, though, doesn't it? The Prophet Yusuf story. It's one of those because it's a complete story. It kind of bookends nicely both ends. So it's a lovely complete story. That you know, we get the fulfillment of the dream at the end, and the family of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam actually moving to Egypt to be with.
That's the thing. He was thrown into the well. He was in the deep, darkest pits of not just of a physical well, but of utter despair, of loneliness, helpfulness. What can I do now? And Allah raised him.
So high.
You know, and just elevated his status, not just within Islam, but within the council of Egypt, within the nation, you know, the outer towns as well, within his initial family. He raised his status and his rank amongst everybody at that time. You know, from somebody in the deepest, darkest pits of a well to a slave market to jail. And then made him, you know, of such stature, and known for his honesty, known for his truth, known for his good character, known to be honest. So everything that he was defamed for, Allah gave him better. Didn't just give it back to him, but gave it back to him in a better form than the people tried to take away from him.
Yeah, definitely. Very satisfying story.
So
it's one that
sorry, go on.
Our children like it as well, don't they? Because it's that kind of that full narrative as well. It's an easy story for children to remember.
We should absolutely be encouraging our children to learn the stories of the prophets, because the children love superhero stories. They love that story of you know, somebody with kind of superhero strength, and our prophets had, in a sense, superpowers that the normal man doesn't have, and they saved. And I mean, look at the story of Noah, you know, you know, he was commanded to build an ark, even though there was no rivers nearby. They weren't living on the beach. They weren't living on the coast to a lake. They were inland, and he was told, build an ark, as if he knew what an ark was. And he was told to, you know, put the people on who were believers, put the animals on. There's going to be such an amount of water that you have never seen before in your life. And the people mocked and ridiculed him. You know, if you put me on a deserted island and you told me to build an ark to get off the island, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I know what an ark looks like. I know what a boat looks like. I know what's needed. I know it needs seats, and it needs an oar, and it needs a way of steering and rowing. And I know what it needs, but I couldn't build it. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I wouldn't know how to get the wood from the tree, what you know, instruments to use. I wouldn't know any of these things. But Allah granted Prophet Noah the information and the skill and the ability and the knowledge to, and the ark was huge. It wasn't a little dinghy for him and his wife. It was huge. You know, if that's not a superhero story,
Yes, I don't know what it is. Yeah.
What is? You know, and
Yeah.
I mean, how many of our children, or even us as adults, we know the story of Jaws, the big white killer white shark, great white shark, who terrorizes the beach, and just kills for fun. And there's several films of Jaws. Then more recently, there's a film, The Meg, which is a prehistoric sized again killer shark.
Or is it a big sharky thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but so imagine the fear of Prophet Jonah. He's on this boat and they're drawing lots to see who is going to get thrown overside, because the ship is sinking in the sea, and they need to lighten the load of the ship, and they're throwing the cargo over the ship to try and keep the ship afloat. And they decide that they need to throw some people overboard as well. And they're drawing the lots, and Prophet Jonah, his name is drawn.
It comes out, yeah.
So sorry for him. So they draw it again, and again his name is drawn. So there's no way of getting out of it. I think 3 times in total, 2 or 3 times his name was drawn. And they have no option but to throw him overside. Then you get this image of Jaws, of this beast in the sea coming towards you, and its mouth's open, and the sides of, oh my goodness, you're never going to set foot in Redcar Beach again, are you really? And then you're swallowed, and then you kind of, you're in the belly of
the whale.
And the wave dives, the whale dives down into the depths of the ocean beyond where we are able to send our submarines, and still lives.
Amazing. Yeah.
Is that not, a story that you should be telling your children as a superhero story? So we have to look at these stories of the prophets, whether it's Prophet Yusuf, any of the prophet stories. They all have such amazing meanings for us as adults to learn from, including how to be with our families, how to be with our children, our elders, how to work. For example, the story of Prophet Shuaib in the town of Midian, where they were giving false measures and false weights. Those who work in, for example, the meat shops, or they work in the herbal shops, where they have to weigh the price. This is the story of Midian. They were taking money off people without giving the true measure of stuff. So even in terms of how we work, we shouldn't take money for one thing and provide something else. We should give exactly what the person is paid for. And they're just amazing stories.
They are.
For us as adults, whether it's for our children, and we really, really, really should be reading more about them and learning the deeper meanings on how to deal with the problems that we face today via the stories of the prophets.
Yeah. So, 7 o'clock.
So I need to have an appointment with the government.
Yeah.
I'm going to have a boxing glove on one hand and a flag on the other, and depending on which one I use, depends on how on what they announce. So we will end this week's program there for today.
Yeah.
Obviously, we will be back again, inshallah. Next week. We could possibly be our last show, depending on when Eid will be. So
yeah, I don't think we can run to a 5th one. That would probably make Ramadan about 34 days long or something. So that's not going to happen.
Allah plans and we plan, but so inshallah we'll be back next week.
Inshallah, yeah.
So please do join us next week for Sister Circle. Jazakallah khair, Julie, for all the information.
No problem.
On Prophet Yusuf and the details before Prophet Yusuf as well. It's really interesting. And inshallah, we'll be back next week.
Inshallah. Lovely to be here.
So thank you to all our listeners. Please have an amazing week with your fast. May Allah accept all your abstaining from food and water. May He keep you all safe and healthy. May He keep your relatives safe and healthy. May He keep your homes established, your workplace still running, and and, keep us all upon the straight path so that we strengthen our connection with him and become better Muslims by the time we exit Ramadan, inshallah. Ameen.
Inshallah.
So, Jazakallah khair for listening to Sister Circle, and we will be with you next week. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.